Okay, America enters the war. I got a quick, brief audio blurb for you to listen to real quick, and I'll let you listen to that right here.
December 7th, 1941, dawned like any other Sunday in Hawaii, where teenager Daniel Inouye lived with his family. Like other Americans who lived through the experience, Inouye would never forget what he was doing the moment American isolationism ended. As soon as I finished brushing my teeth and pulled on my trousers, I automatically clicked on the little radio that stood on the shelf above my bed. I remember that I was buttoning my shirt and looking out the window when the hum of the warming set gave way to a frenzied voice. "This is no test," the voice cried out. "Pearl Harbor is being bombed by the Japanese." The Inouye family ran outside and gazed toward the naval base at Pearl Harbor. And then we saw the planes. They came zooming up out of that sea of gray smoke, flying north toward where we stood and climbing into the bluest part of the sky. And they came in 2s and 3s, in neat formations. And if it hadn't been for that red ball on their wings, the rising sun of the Japanese Empire, you could easily believe that they were Americans, flying over in precise military salute.
Okay, nice description of the attack on Pearl Harbor. We'll talk more about Pearl Harbor later. Okay, so FDR, he supports England early on. Okay, so 2 days after Britain and France declared war against Germany, President Roosevelt declared the United States neutral. Okay, the Neutrality Act of 1939 allowed warring countries to buy weapons from the United States as long as they paid cash and carried the arms away on their own ships. So President Roosevelt, he uses a loophole in the Neutrality Act of 1939, and he sends 50 old American destroyers to Britain in exchange for the right to build American bases on British-controlled Newfoundland, Bermuda, and the Caribbean islands. Sorry about that. Didn't mean for you to see that. But anyway, answer that question. So we still have this debate on whether we should be isolationists at the time. After the German invasion of France and the rescue of Allied forces at Dunkirk, American public opinion changes to favor limited aid to the Allies. The America First Committee opposes any American intervention aid to the Allies at this time. President Roosevelt ran for an unprecedented third term as president in the election of 1940 during this time period, and he is elected. Both Roosevelt and the Republican candidate, Wendell Willkie, said they would keep the United States neutral but assist the Allied forces. Spoiler alert, he gets reelected. Okay, Roosevelt wins by a large margin. All right, so creeping up on war. Roosevelt proposes the Lend-Lease Act, which stated that the United States could lend or lease arms to any country considered vital to the defense of the United States. Congress passes this act by a wide margin. In June of 1941, in violation of the Nazi-Soviet pact, Hitler began a massive invasion of the Soviet Union. Was that right? Oh, that's all. That's interesting. President Roosevelt develops the Hemispheric Defense Zone, which declared the entire western half of the Atlantic as part of the Western Hemisphere and therefore makes it neutral. This allowed Roosevelt to order the U.S. Navy to patrol the western Atlantic Ocean and reveal the location of German submarines to the British. In August 1941, President Roosevelt and Prime Minister Winston Churchill agreed to the Atlantic Charter. This agreement committed the two leaders to a post-war world of democracy, non-aggression, free trade, economic advancement, and freedom of the seas. After a German U-boat fired on the American destroyer Greer, Roosevelt ordered American ships to follow a shoot-on-sight policy toward German submarines. Germans torpedoed and sank the American destroyer, the Reuben James, in the North Atlantic, which goes to show that the Germans probably should have learned something about using their U-boats against American ships in the first place. So Japan attacks the United States. Roosevelt's primary goal between August 1939 and December 1941 was to help Britain and its allies defeat Germany. Okay, when Britain began moving its warships from Southeast Asia to the Atlantic, Roosevelt introduced policies to discourage the Japanese from attacking the British Empire. In July 1940, Congress passed the Export Control Act, giving Roosevelt the power to restrict the sale of strategic materials which were important for fighting a war, to other countries. Roosevelt immediately blocked the sale of airplane fuel and scrap iron to Japan. This forced the Japanese. They signed an alliance with Germany and Italy because of this. And so by July of 1941, Japanese aircraft were posing a direct threat to the British Empire. Roosevelt responded to this threat by freezing all Japanese assets in the United States and reducing the amount of oil shipped to Japan. He also sent General MacArthur to the Philippines to build up American defenses there. The Japanese decided to attack resource-rich British and Dutch colonies in the Southeast Asia and seize the Philippines and attack Pearl Harbor at this time. Japan attacks Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941, sinking or damaging 21 ships of the U.S. Pacific Fleet, killing 2,400 Americans and injuring hundreds more. But they missed their primary goal, which was to sink the aircraft carriers, which were not in port this day. The next day, President Roosevelt asked Congress to declare war on Japan. And on December 11, 1941, Japan's allies, Germany and Italy, declared war on the United States, thus embroiling us in a worldwide war that we would be in for several years. All right, and that concludes our discussion today of the talk about Japan. Not Japan, but how U.S. enters the war, and do the Edmodo quiz for that. And I will talk to you later. Thank you.